My name is Jose Zavala, and I'm a chemical engineer. I've been teaching math and physics and chemistry for around 10 years, probably a little bit more. Not full-time, part-time, but I really enjoy it.
My name is Rosa Arbizu. I am a psychologist. I have been teaching English and also psychology. My discipline is teaching English and tutoring, as well as psychology. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Giselle Palomino. I study international trade and also teaching English. I teach English and another subject like economy, administration, and some formative subjects. I have teaching since 2006, and that's all.
Hi, my name is Berenice. My discipline is communication. I have been teaching English for 7 years.
Hello, my name is Alfonsina. I am an English and Spanish teacher, and I have been teaching English like for 1 year. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Rosa Elena Lima. I've been a biology and anatomy teacher for 31 years.
Hi, my name is René Rubio. I am vet, and I'm teaching biology for 20 years. Thank you.
In the middle of the
You want to circle are 3 small circles that are lined up. Who has cross? Yeah, cross. At the top of the
waves on top of it. Big waves. Big waves. Okay.
The language proficiency standards, there are different domains of the standards. There are interpersonal communication, there's interpretive listening, interpretive reading, there are presentational skills. We're not getting into all of that. We're focusing on these 3 areas during our workshop because we're only together for 3 days. And really, are we going to get into formal presentational skills in 3 days? Probably not. So we're looking at interpersonal communication, interpretive listening, and interpretive reading. And those are going to be modeled throughout the 3 days. And the idea is that if you're learning a new language, that you would be increasing from novice to advanced in these different areas of language proficiency. Now, if you aren't teaching a new language in your classroom, you may still infuse the principles of those C's, of the 5 C's, into your classroom, because students, if we're preparing students for a global workplace, I'd like for you to start and look at the back of this page. I think this is fairly interesting. So this is looking at oral proficiency levels in the workplace. I have heard folks say that students graduate in their discipline, but they don't have enough language to be proficient globally in that discipline. So I may have made it through to pass the test to get the degree, but was I prepared for the right communication for the workforce? And this really gives you a nice layout for when you're teaching a second language or looking at your language proficiency, which level you would want to be at to move into different careers. Okay, in your notebook, learning output. So, on the first page 8 that you have, informative assessment, I'd like you to turn your notebook landscape and draw this table for me. So you just have 3 columns, skills, knowledge, and attitudes. Can you draw that in your notebook, please? I can retrieve it, I recall it, and I can list it. It doesn't take a lot of thinking, right? It's easy. It's just giving the answers, telling me what you said. Same thing. To understand, I have to take something and put it in my own words. Paraphrase, explain, interpret. I can summarize it. I classify. I infer. This is what I understand. Okay? If I can apply something, I can take it and do something with it. So I execute, implement, present, model, and simulate, right? When I apply knowledge. When I analyze, I have to like a magnifying glass. I have to really look down and scrutinize it, to take it apart. That's what I always think analyze, pull things apart. I differentiate, I chart the information, I scrutinize, organize, or distinguish between two things. When I evaluate something, it's a much higher order thinking because you have to have a feeling or an opinion about it. You have to be able to argue to evaluate. Lots of vocabulary needed for arguing, right? So I have to actually be able to recommend something, I have to have an opinion about it. So I recommend, I critique, I validate, I argue, and I rate it. And then finally, if I create something, highest order, I can take all these things and I can create something new. I can modify, I can plan, I can generate, reorganize, or produce.
I would say that one of my most, there's been many, but one of my most significant takeaways from this professional development, I would say, has been the ability to immerse myself once again in what is my culture. It's reminded me of what it is to actually have to think in two languages. And speaking with some of the participants, it was so amazing that I had forgotten what it takes to think and process in two languages. And so I think that kind of leads into my second question, is how is this going to affect my instructional practice? I think I'm going to kind of keep that in mind, how students need time to process, more wait time, because I think sometimes I forget that and I'm so quick to, okay, move on, or are you having a problem with it? Or I want to explain, but they may have it, but just give them more time to think and process.
There are things that we call cultural universals. So that's the last segment in terms of teaching about culture, in terms of defining culture, giving us little components of culture, and then basically digging down a little bit, and then recognizing that in all cultures we have certain features, okay? So every culture has a form of exchange, whether it's money, whether it's gifts, whatever it is, every culture does that, but they all do it a little differently, right? So in some cultures, they may only have gift exchanges. They may not have money. In others, they have money that drives them, but they still are exchanging. All cultures have marriage and family. In some cultures, you can have 2 husbands, 3 husbands. In some cultures, you can have 2 wives, 3 wives, okay? And in others, only 1. In some cultures, you can marry, divorce, too, whatever. So marriage and family is everywhere, but how they look might be different, okay? Education is everywhere, but it may look differently. That's what we mean by a universal. We all share the same, if you think about it like an umbrella, education is an umbrella, right? Everybody has it, but it looks differently in every culture. So everybody has laws, but and I put it as social control, but it looks differently in every culture. So one of the important pieces in terms of teaching any concept is to start like at what we call a micro level, a small level. You can start either way and go to the large, macro, or you start macro and work your way down. So with culture, I've kind of started with the small by talking about all the different elements, and then I ended with the macro, which are the universals that cover all of us. But you could do it either way, whichever way you wanted to in terms of that.
I was thinking that I can get a refresh about what's the job in the classroom with peers from a different country, and I really enjoyed what they did, like having the material prepared in advance, and the way in which they were caring about the dynamics and the attitudes and the performance of the groups, and I really like it a lot. I think that my expectations were kind of satisfied.
Yeah. I am so happy to receive this course right now. My expectations mainly was to improve my teaching English, and today I did it. I know there are many strategies more to learn, but today I learned a lot. Thank you.
Well, at the beginning I was thinking about it's another English teaching course, but it wasn't. It was a very interesting course because we learned a lot. I remember many strategies, but I learned new strategies that they could be interesting to improve in my classroom.
Well, at the beginning, I didn't have any idea of what I was going to study to learn. So when I arrived, I say to myself, oh, interesting. So at this moment, I have more tools to improve and to give to my students so they can develop learning in my class.
So I was looking for improve my skills about teaching, and I think I really learned a lot here.
I expected to learn and learn and learn as much as possible.
Mi expectativa para este taller fue incrementar nuestras relaciones entre Mesa Community College y la Universidad de Guanajuato.
I'm sharing this strategy with you to increase interpersonal communication skills. Before we can present in our discipline formal communication, whether your discipline is anthropology or science or math, before your students can present on a topic, we're modeling a strategy for small group interpersonal skills. So this is what we're going to do is called a poster carousel, is the name of the strategy. And it's a way for students to increase their oral language proficiency. So in your groups, you need to determine which two people in your group are going to present the posters. Not to everybody, but who are going to be your presenters? Choose two people from your group. Now, choose them. Sitting to go and stand by the people in your group. You're not holding the poster, just stand by them. Go stand by the people in your group. Okay, so this strategy, what you're going to do are two people are going to stay and present. The other folks in the group are going to move from one group to the other, and you're going to have 2 minutes. Well, I'll tell you, you're going to have time at every poster. And you're going to present your poster all of these times, 8 times, the same thing. You're going to present. Sometimes you're going to present to other people with your same culture. Sometimes you'll present to folks with American culture. So you may say things a little bit differently. But we're presenting in English. Because when we have students who are working on their oral language proficiency, if I present the same thing 6 times, I'm going to get better and better every time I present it, right? And it's incredibly embarrassing if I'm learning a new language to present that to everybody. So you can do this just in small groups. Now, if you are listening, you have a job too. So you're going to go around to the posters, and I want you to follow this process. Listen to the presentation. And you're listening in, when we're acquiring a language, if it's a new language, your new language is English, which is your L2. So you are listening in your L2. And then I want you to talk to the people in your group, and I want you to make sure you understood what it was in Spanish, in your L1. And then you can ask questions and say, so what you were saying was, or I think you mean, or I understand because in English. And for the Americans who are here, will you please present to them in Spanish? Okay?
Everything in Mexico has a compilation of draws. You can see the roast beef cabrito is very famous at the north of the Mexico in Nuevo León. And you can see the fundamental of the Mexican food, beans and corn. If you use corn, can prepare tortillas. And with the combination of corn and beans, have a lot of plates of food in Mexico. Another thing, Mexicans have a lot of archaeology because we have an ancient American cultures located in Teotihuacan, in this place on the center of Mexico, and another, the Mayan culture at the south of Mexico. This culture, there is interchange and create some variety of a diversity of food, like chocolate is another typical of Mexico because the chocolate is a fundamental part to create the mole. Mole is a typical food of Mexico located in Puebla and Oaxaca and Chiapas. In Chiapas of Mexico we have a Lacandona jungle when we can find some turtles, fishes. This is a monkey. And of course some crocodiles and snakes in this part. This part is the Caribbean of Mexico, located with Cancun. Cancun is a place. This is a banana. Banana is located right in the jungle of Chiapas. And we can find some part of coast. This is a Pacific coast of Mexico. This is the Gulf of Mexico when we located the petroleum. Petroleum is energetic for Mexico. It's a principal main of energy. And this is Baja California, where we can find how to say frontera.
One of the most significant things for me in all of these trips, and again with this one, has been how each trip has expanded my understanding of education in Mexico. And this trip in particular, it added a dimension of the prepas level. I feel like I'm starting to understand the university system in Mexico, and so being able to add to it some more knowledge about how the prepa system works and how it works in conjunction with the university system, for me is the biggest part that I'm working to assimilate into my understanding of the education and assumptions about education here in Mexico, which helps me to think about our own assumptions about higher education, who gets it, who doesn't, what's important, things about completion, all of the things that are going on. I think that understanding another system better helps me to think more critically about our own system and see things that we might not be seeing otherwise. As far as my own instructional practice, what I did for my presentation here was really a variation on something I've done many times in my own classes, but having to rethink it for an audience that had variable levels of skill in English made me really think about how I will probably present it the next time I do it in class. So I thought about some of the cultural assumptions that were embedded within it, since the assignment was about grocery shopping. I was fully aware that grocery shopping in a United States supermarket is a very different thing from grocery shopping in a small grocery or a mercado here in Mexico. And so, for example, in my own class, I would have written a grocery list on the board, and we would have worked with that as well as students' own list. I decided not to do that part this time because my grocery list would have been so embedded within my cultural assumptions that I thought it would be distracting or become the issue. And so we worked just with the students' grocery list. And I'm going to be rethinking that for the next time I teach it for my English 102 classes, because even if students are native speakers, they're not all equally strong listeners and processors of English. So I think just the things I thought through as I prepared my part of the presentation will affect the way I speak to my students. So in my classes, I try very hard not to talk about good writing, as though there is some kind of writing that is always effective for every audience in every circumstance. I try to talk in terms where I might have once used the word good, I try to use the word effective. But this is what I'm trying to tell students is not sufficient, right? They've often been told their thesis, their main point, must be the last sentence of the first paragraph. If they put it somewhere else, they're punished by losing points. Right? That the last paragraph must restate that thesis, that each of these. This is a fine way, I think, to begin teaching writers about structure and support. But often this template is used too long in American education. And they arrive at my class still trying to make everything fit into this. And I don't think that this works very well in a lot of academic situations. Write about the most important 3 reasons for whatever. But in a lot of other situations, this is insufficient. And so I need them to think beyond this. Right? In your journal, I'd like for you to make a shopping list, a grocery shopping list, of at least 8 things. So what is the list supposed to do? What is a grocery list supposed to do? It's to remind you, so it could be to remind you, I have to get this, this, or this. Or if you're like me, you go into the store and you come back out and you go home and you remember the things that you didn't buy, right? So one of the purposes of a grocery list is to remind us of things that we might otherwise forget. It's a very simple kind of text, right? All right, okay, so how many of you think that the list you've written is a good example of a grocery list? You're proud of your grocery list? It's very grocery list-like. Right? No, I'm only seeing a couple of hands. All right, okay, all right, perfectly fine. Right. How do you know?
Personal choice.
Okay, so it's your list, you listed it. It seems fine to you, right? Okay. It's what you need. There are things on there that you need, okay? It's what your wife asked you to buy. Who is a grocery list for? It could be for your family, right? So it could be your wife might make one for you. You might make one for your husband, right? Sometimes, I bumped the button. Now you're seeing a preview. So sometimes, though, it's just for yourself, right? Like, as you said, so it's personal choice, right? All right, let me lose that. Okay, so either next to it, below it, on the next page, thank you. We're out of control now, all right? Now, if you need to revise that list, because writing in my classes is all about revision. Get something down, assess it, revision, that kind of recursive process. So I'd like for you to make another list or to revise this list that is for a family member who will do the shopping. You may already have done that, and that's fine. But if your original list was just for yourself, it may not be a good list for somebody else. So if you need to revise it, take a couple of minutes and revise it. How many of you took up the challenge to write your list for an American to go shopping? Anybody? Okay. Now, you've been to the U.S. Yes. Have you been in a U.S. supermarket? Yes. So you might be able to think about the assumptions that American shoppers have versus shoppers in Mexico. Did that help you in writing it? Yes. Okay. What changes do you think you made as a result of that?
I made, for example, it was all brand. I went from the brand Kellogg's, and I went a big box. Yogurt, I went lactose-free. Cheese, lactose-free. Cucumber, 2 middle-sized pieces. 1 corn tortilla, 1 kilo. Bread, I went integral. Bimbo, a large whole bread, and a large size. And I want a small banana called Dominico Fries.
Okay, so lots of details, right? About amount, about brand, about size, about type. When Bere and I were talking about her list, a Tabasco banana doesn't mean much to an American. To Americans, Tabasco is a brand of hot sauce. So hot sauce bananas require a little explanation, right? But I asked her, if I go to the Comercial, notice she told me what store to go to. If I go, will I find a sign that says Tabasco bananas? And she assured me that I would, and so I'll go shopping for her. right? I won't have to ask an employee which ones are the Tabasco bananas, right? And so if it's labeled, right, and you notice that we have illustrations here, right, to help me which tomatoes to buy, right? So a combination of things. We talked about all this stuff. I feel fairly confident that I could do a pretty good job with Bere's list.
I think on a personal level, coming to Guanajuato, it helped me. It helped me to see that I'm a much smaller part of a much bigger picture. That what I'm doing in my classroom is being duplicated around the world, but in different ways. And on a professional level, I think I can be in the classroom talking to students, especially my Hispanic students, and I could try to understand where they're coming from, but it hasn't been until living here that I can fully appreciate what their experiences are. And for me, that's significant because it helps me to connect with them on just a more intimate level. Before it was just, you know, me imagining what their experience was going to be. Now I can actually understand and appreciate it even more. The other thing that I found fascinating is just even with some of the math that we teach, it's the same math, but they actually approach it in a way that is, they do some things that are subtly different than how we do it. And it's allowed me to reconsider teaching some of the topics differently, just because I think for some students it would be more understandable. So here's my challenge as a teacher. Here's my challenge. I teach at a community college, and a lot of my students are Spanish-speaking students, so they have a hard time with the English. So I need to somehow be able to help my Spanish-speaking students while at the same time helping my English-speaking students. That's one challenge. Second challenge, I have to teach the math. I can't spend all of my time talking about vocabulary and, you know, how to translate from English to Spanish. I have to teach math. So that's my second challenge. My third challenge, and what Jennifer was talking about, I need to motivate my students so that they can see, so that they can get, have a desire to want to be in a STEM career. Science, technology, engineering, mathematics. I need to somehow show them how the math will help them in their career. So that's my challenge. And I got to keep everybody listening and engaged, okay? So I'm going to try to do that by talking about one of the things that Jennifer talked about, the slope of a line, okay? And you guys watch me, and you tell me if I do a good job, and at the end, if you would do something differently, you tell me what I would do differently, okay? All right, so let's talk about the slope of a line. So how do I explain or describe this slope? How do I measure it? Okay, next slide. So one way I can measure it is I can see how far up, we use the word rise, how far across. Okay, what are some other words for this? What is a slope? It's a fraction. It's a fraction. What's the top number? 1. What's the bottom number? 2. 1 over 2. 1, go up 1, 2 over 2. Okay? All right. Now, what we just talked about, guys, it's just math. It's just calculating. You guys were plotting points. You were putting numbers on your paper. You were doing math. Okay? That's what we do in a math classroom, is we do a lot of math. And what we're being asked to do is we got to do more than math. We have to show students how they're going to do math in the real world. So what is that slope? What does it mean in the real world? What does it mean? Okay, it's not just a fraction. It means something more than that. So the slope depends on what x is and what y is. What is x in the real world? What is y in the real world? Okay. So we want to know, is there a relationship between how many science classes a student takes and how they do on their SAT score? So go ahead and show that. X, what does X represent? Number of science classes. What does Y represent? SAT score. Is there a relationship? Next. Okay. What's my slope? 150. That's the number in front of X. That's my slope. Change in Y over change in X. What does Y represent? SAT score. What does the X represent? So my top, if 150, if I write that as a fraction, that's going to be 150 over 1. So what does this mean? You guys might want to write this down. This means that for one science class, what does that do to my SAT score? It increases my SAT score by how many points? To 150 points, 150 points, okay? So for every increase in one science class, if I just take one more science class, what is that going to do to my SAT score? It's going to bring it up 150 points.
And so while I was listening to their lesson, I was trying to make sure that I knew very well the process that they were describing to me. So regardless of which data we looked at, we did the same thing every time. In this process, we use slope. When we integrate STEM into our disciplines, if we want to use slope, we collect reliable data that has two variables, right? We plot the data points onto a graph, and then I said to Sean and Jennifer, how did you get that line? I don't know how you got the line. And they said, well, that's really advanced math, which is why I really had a hard time in statistics last semester. They said that's really advanced math, and you can calculate it, but there is technology software that you can use that will allow you to put those data points into the software, and it will make the line for you. I would probably take that route, right? I teach education studies. I will tell you that. So I need to, but they did tell me that's called a regression line. I didn't know what that line was called. So I need to identify the regression line, and I can use manual calculations or software such as Excel. There's other statistical software that we can use as well. And then I need to determine the slope and make an evidence-based claim or projection. Because for me, I'm not a mathematician, but I do feel very strongly about making evidence-based claims and projections that are based on real data. Because that advances the students I work with and my profession. So I know now that I could use this process to back up my work and what I'm doing. And I could probably transfer this process to my classroom.
Yes, because we have to take advantage or apply the technologies and also the way in which they connect. They connected one of the sessions on math to what I do with my students. It was very, very relevant.
Writing essays is very important for me because I also teach English, so I I practice the APA format and the MLA format, which is different to use in English class than in psychology class.
Well, I guess that is so relevant because we are teachers, so all them are very important, as my partner said, in writing, because I think that is a skill that they feel fair more than and speaking to. And I think that all the activities that we did are relevant to improve in the classroom.
Yeah, of course, I really learned a lot, and now I can help to my students, so I am very happy about that.
Definitely relevant.
For me, I think the best is all the students try to get international experience. I think it's the best. Thank you.
I had the wonderful opportunity of serving students in my discipline from all various cultures and backgrounds, and I have found that what I take back from this experience for my instructional reflection is that oftentimes I may make the assumption that students understand some of the things that I'm ready to present to them. And maybe there's, after teaching for 20 years, you sort of not lose empathy, but you forget what it's like to be in the processing stage of the learner. And so what I'm going to do when I return is to think about those tier 2 vocabulary words, because I did a vocabulary session in which taught vocabulary strategies to use in the classroom. But what I realize is that pacing is extremely important, and chunking may be a little bit more important. And if I have the opportunity to come back, then what I'm going to do is make sure that I scaffold a little bit more and ask about the levels of the students. In my classroom, I am going to take this opportunity to teach the vocabulary strategies by using the tier 2 vocabulary words, which often sometimes I can see from an instructional standpoint, but this gave me the opportunity to see what it's like from a learner standpoint. I want to make sure that I learned that the importance of consistency and being able to use those tier 2 vocabulary words across disciplines. So I'm going to try to connect with some of my colleagues that when I'm creating a rubric or creating an assessment, that I take the time to maybe see what language is being used throughout other disciplines so that I can embed them also in my rubrics or assessment language so that students understand and have that consistency amongst vocabulary.
I gave you each a slice of the pie, and I want you to, talk about things at your table about your different discipline, and while you're listening and talking, choose one of those ideas and share it on the paper here. Maybe a graphic representation, not a bunch of words, something that could show us how you could choose your path in your discipline. So choose one example from your table or your slice of the pie.
We choose the diagnostic quiz because we can check the previous knowledge for our students, and in this case take or modify our classes in time or sessions or level of accuracy of the knowledge.
Thank you. So at the end, usually teachers were evaluated by our students here in Universidad of Guanajuato, but also some of us asked them to for feedback, questions about teachers' development in class. So we do like a kind of survey or like a kind of interviews. So we write down in a journal what do they thought about our development in the class.
That's great. And so in this sense, you may chunk that a little bit more.
Yes.
So I finish a unit, and now I get some feedback. I'm not going to go back and teach it. It's over. But I'm going to get some feedback so I can plan for next semester. Yeah. That's good. Thank you.
I think that I can take the specific instructions before the session or before my course. She made very good in the way in which she was asking for the work in the class, and also the application, the work that we did with the fonts, using the technology to make the exercise. It was good for me. I think I will take that for my class.
The close notes, it was for me a challenge because they put me to actually think, and I feel like the students sometimes are in that situation, and I like the vocabulary word, like word collection. I like that.
I guess that I need to improve in my classroom, following specific instructions, because I think that it will be helpful for them and help them to feel comfortable with that. And more new ideas about assessment, because assessment is a little difficult sometimes because we evaluate many things, formative and summative. So it's interesting, and sometimes it's difficult for us. So I will take them to my classes.
For me, the journal was so great because Ms. Megan showed us another angle of how we can make a journal with our students, knowing that they are very creative.
So I really enjoy the vocabulary techniques because they're very interesting. I love words and I love to teach words, so it's a good idea how to work this way.
I love the maps, all the models of maps. I am already doing exercises using these maps. I'm right now using these maps with my books. And the journal, we have something similar to our journal because it's an evidence for the kids and for the parents even to show what they're doing.
I enjoyed the inside-outside circle, and I improved in my class. And also I liked the rotation for evaluation of the people. I liked that thing.
For me, this professional experience was unique because I was able to play two roles. I came down as the Director of International Education for MCC to follow up on a very long-standing MOU that we have with the University of Guanajuato, and also as adjunct faculty. And I was able to learn in both roles as well. I was able to connect with those that have the tools to start some really unique programs with MCC. And on the faculty side, I was able to gain learning strategies, teaching strategies for the students that I know will be very, very useful to me as an adjunct faculty.
I think that with the effective instruction, the way in which effective is evaluated, I think that's the question that I have. How you measure effectiveness? That's the question that I have.
Creation, I think is for English classes is a good issue. Also to evaluate is very important. I believe all of them are important, but to me there are two mainly.
Question: when will be the second part? I think that it's the only question that I still have, and I want answer by that, please.
For me, I would like to learn deeper about writing. That would be so interesting because our students need that skill, and also maybe conversation.
These questions are not for you. These questions are for me. How can I start improving my classes with all these techniques? When can I start? Who is it for? How can I adapt all this from the students from the States to my Mexican students, to the size of my classes? Those are questions for me right now in my head. How can I use all this information? But the questions for you, I don't have any.
The only question I have is when come the students to get a relation with our students? For the question.